I want to thank the Orange County Public Library for hosting this event. It's fabulous. We have so many people that are attending tonight. And I want to thank Hannah Turner, hi Hannah, for coordinating this. Hannah Turner is publicist and founder of Spellbound Public Relations. And we're so glad that you got us together, Hannah. This is so exciting.
Yay.
We will have time at the end of the panel for questions. I promise we want your questions, and I will let you know when we're ready for your questions, and you can let us know you have a question by physically waving or using your cool little emoji hand wave if you know how to do that. So that's so cool. All right, so I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Sara Johnson, and I happen to be an author too. This is my book. It's called Molten Mud Murder, and it came out last September. I have another book that's coming out this September. They're by Poison Pen Press Source Books, and they are forensic mysteries set in New Zealand. So they're very exciting books. I'm also president of Triangle Sisters in Crime, and we are an organization that supports crime and mystery writers. And Nora is one of our great members, and I hope that JG and Vernon will consider joining, because we like to have misters with our sisters. So I am so excited to be moderating this event. And without further ado, I would like to start by introducing Nora Gaskin. Nora is editor, author, and publisher of Lystra Books and Literary Services. She has written 2 crime novels called Until Proven, and most recently, The Worst Thing, which I've just finished for the 2nd time. It's fabulous. It's a story that turns the commonplace objects from young women's lives, things like selfies, cell phones, Google Maps, scissors, glossy magazines, vintage fashion, and ponytails into elements of suspense. And she does an amazing job at this. She has also written one nonfiction true crime story called Time of Death, and it's about a murder that took place in Chapel Hill, I think in the 60s, and it's definitely on my to-be-read list. She lives and writes in Chatham County, and she's inspired by her native landscape, her husband, who's with us tonight, and dogs. And her favorite word is gratitude. And we are so grateful that you're here tonight, Nora. And we'd like to start by having Nora read a passage from her book. So Nora, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Hannah, for coordinating all of this. And I too thank the Orange County Public Library. This is great. And thank you, everybody who's joined. I'm going to read chapter 1, page 1, and just a little bit beyond page 1. Let me check. Am I loud enough? Too loud? Everything okay with the sound?
You're good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. March 2012. Albert went in the back door. Bitch Mom was in the living room with the TV on. Dr. Phil laying down the law to somebody. His dad had hated that guy. He yelled at the TV like the man could hear him, mocked the suits and ties, and fumed about how unfair the world was, but this fat idiot got rich and famous. Maybe the IRS should check old Phil out. And all the time, Mom kept watching, kept cranking up the volume. Albert wondered why she still bothered, since she didn't have Dad there to aggravate anymore. It hurt Albert's head to think about all that. He went through the room without speaking and upstairs. The sound of Dr. Phil's voice followed him. Do you want to know what I think? That was always the question, and hell no, he did not. He got to his room and closed the door before the doctor delivered his opinion. As loud as Phil's voice was, Dad's was just as loud in Albert's head. He's got the devil's own luck. That's what Dad said about people who had what he wanted. Mom had done laundry and dumped his clean clothes outside his door. He had finally gotten through to her that he did not want her in his room, ever. But did that mean she couldn't fold his stuff? Couldn't put it down on a clean sheet to keep it off the floor she never vacuumed? It made him mad because he wanted to take a shower, the first thing he did after work, and she made him waste all this time. He folded each piece and put it away. Finally, he stripped off his work clothes. He got dirty working for the moving company, and he was sure the boss, Joe Biggers, gave him the filthiest jobs. Albert bundled the clothes he took off, and as he passed the stairs on his way to the bathroom, dropped them over the rail. Let her pick them up. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror. His scalp was sweaty from wearing a watch cap all day. That was Bigger's fault, too. He said he didn't want customers seeing the tattoo on the back of Albert's head. He peeled the cap off and felt his skin, stubbly. He put a new blade in his razor and shaved while he was in the shower. When his chin and cheeks were smooth enough, he ran the razor in an arc over his ear. He went downstairs. He had to step over the clothes he had dropped. It was a cooking show now, that woman who went to jail. She was maybe the person Dad hated most because she was still rich, still on TV. And Dad was queer. Dad. Albert hoped if they had TV wherever Dad was now, it showed this woman's face 24/7. For God's sake, Mom said, cover that thing up. What she always said about his tattoo. She put her hand over her mouth, and he wasn't sure if she laughed or gagged. He tapped the knife in his pocket, went to the kitchen, wiped the counter with one of the germ-killing wipes he had to buy for himself. Mom came in. He touched the back of his head, then flipped her off, but she didn't see. He made a sandwich to take to his room. He ate the sandwich and drank some water. He felt good. Later, if he couldn't sleep, he'd go for a drive. He'd make a swing by the building where his dad's old restaurant had once been, before the IRS shut it down. If he didn't keep an eye on it, some old homeless wino bedded down in the doorway. Sometimes Albert thought it was his old man's ghost inside that cardboard shack, sleeping under the sleeping bag that was so rotten Albert wouldn't touch it. But ghosts didn't bother him. A ghost was a nothing. Albert wasn't afraid of his old man anymore, not afraid of bitch Mom either. But when he drove around, he liked to think what it would be like to have somebody in the van with him, somebody who said his name, and when they saw the wino ghost told him, that's not you, that'll never be you. Maybe tonight when he opened the door to the van, she'd be there, and she'd say, where have you been? I've been waiting.
Ooh. Ooh.
I know. Nora, it makes my skin crawl.
In a good way, right?
In a good way. That's great. We can't wait to hear more about it after JG is going to read next. So I would like to go ahead and introduce JG Hetherton now. JG Hetherton is the author of Last Girl Gone, and also of the forthcoming sequel, What Lies Beneath. That's such a great title. Last Girl Gone is a Sun Sentinel top debut mystery of 2018, and it is about a down-and-out investigative journalist, Laura Chambers, who returns to her hometown of Hillsborough, which is so exciting, of Hillsborough, North Carolina, determined to write the story of two young girls, one found dead in a field, the other still missing. He was raised in rural Wisconsin, graduated from Northwestern University, and lives in Durham, North Carolina with his wife and twin daughters. So JG, we'd love for you to read a passage from Last Girl Gone.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Sarah. I just want to echo everything that Nora said and say thank you so much for inviting me to participate. And I will read also right from the top, maybe just from the end of the first chapter here. And I think it's a little less than 5 minutes. Sitting on the concrete steps above the racetrack, replaying the scene in her mind, she had the overwhelming urge to reach out and slap herself. He can't help you. He won't do a thing for you, she wanted to shriek. The cars stacked up at the starting line and fired their engines. The throaty roar lifted up through the pine trees and carried away on the wind. When the race was over, Patty made her way to the parking lot. This was the crux of her plan, to find a woman, an out-of-towner, and convince her she needed a ride somewhere like Raleigh or Greensboro. Either way, she would have a 40-mile head start. That was all she needed. Yellow sodium lamps stood in a long line down the center of the lot, hissing and painting the passing crowd in sickly shades of yellow. Mosquitoes hovered in black knots near their glow, occasionally breaking off to dive the spectators in crazed kamikaze runs. The people hurried to their cars. The plan was working poorly. Patty found it difficult to approach the families as they slid past, and the few times she managed to speak up, they brushed her aside like a panhandler begging for change. In minutes, half the lot was empty, the aisles clogged with big curved Fords and Chevys angling toward the exit. Headlights slashed tunnels through the mist rolling in off the river. The lamp sputtered once and then went out. She walked toward the back of the lot and sat down on a stump. Only a few cars were left, and these, she suspected, belonged to the workers at the track. All of them were sure to be local. The third attempt had failed like all the others. Stupid, she thought, and punched herself on the thigh. Directly behind her, an engine turned over once, and twin headlights reached out through the fog, landing on the stump. She turned to look over her shoulder, squinting into the glare. A car door opened. Boots crunched on gravel. "Hey there," a voice called. Patty raised a hand and tried to shield her eyes. She couldn't see anything more than the shape of wide shoulders and the outline of a hat hovering above them. "You out here all alone?" It was a man's voice, raspy, like he'd been punched in the throat. "I'm just waiting," she said, and stopped. All that preparation and the question still caught her off guard. She tried to cobble together her story, tried to think of the best way to play it. Was he local? The voice wasn't familiar. "Waiting for who, sweetheart?" She said nothing. "Waiting for your boyfriend?" Patty Finch was 10 years old. She had never even held a boy's hand. "I don't have a boyfriend," she volunteered. "That's too bad," he said. "That's not right." A click and the car's lights were gone, but her night vision was ruined. She saw nothing but blackness, heard a rustle and the click of a lighter. For a second, she could make out a sharp chin and the end of a hooked nose, but the rest of the man's face remained hidden behind his hat as he craned his neck down toward the flame. Then the lighter went out and he was gone again. The red cherry of his cigarette floated in space, rhythmically glowing and fading, pulsing like the tides. It was Patty who broke the silence. "I gotta get home," she said. "Thought you were waiting for a ride." "I gotta get home," she repeated, and took a step backward. "Hey, don't I know you?" "Sure I do." He threw down his smoke and ground it under his heel, and the darkness was complete again. "You're Patty Finch, aren't you?" She stopped moving and tried to think of a man who knew the Finch family. Couldn't come up with anyone. There was the principal, Mr. Lugal, and Deputy Rogers, who had given her a ride home, but this man wasn't either of them. Then who? Someone who knew her mother? It was as if he could read her mind. "Does your mama know you're out here all alone?" She didn't answer. "Does she?" he asked again. This time there was an edge in his voice. "No, sir," she said. "Well, you shouldn't be. Now get in the car, I'm taking you home." She hesitated. "Patty Finch, you get in this car. You get in this car right now, and maybe I won't tell your mama where I found you." She looked up, eyes searching the dark space that housed the voice. A bit of hope straightened her shoulders. "You promise, mister? You promise you won't tell?" "I won't tell if you won't, Patty." And then he laughed. The laugh surprised her. It was an octave higher than his voice, and it had a musical quality, almost girlish. She liked the sound of it. Hearing his laugh made the decision much easier. Besides, what other choice did she have? The car seat was smooth brown leather, redolent of whiskey and smoke and some kind of perfume. She sank deep into it and still couldn't make out his face in the darkness. "Do you have to take me home right away?" she asked. He weighed this, as though considering doing her a favor. "If you want," he said finally, "I could take you somewhere else." She nodded happily, and he started the engine. And that's the end of the first chapter.
Oh, JG, that is just gripping.
Thank you so much.
Don't do it, Patty. Don't do it.
Ugh.
All right. It looks like Vernon's here. Is
I
that you,
made it.
Vernon?
Hello, everybody.
Yes, that's great, Vernon. We're so glad you're here. I'm going to go ahead and introduce you next. So this is Vernon's book, Friday Calls. E. Vernon F. Glenn is a native Tar Heel, practicing litigator, and author. He has testified before Congress, handicapped football and basketball games, and traveled all about the globe. However, he finds most of his writing inspiration from his time in the courtroom. His debut book, Friday Calls, is a thriller that takes place in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and it's based on true crime experiences Vernon has had throughout his life and career. He is currently preparing for the fall release of Friday Calls Successor novel, You Have Your Way. We're so glad you're here, and we'd love for you to read a passage from your book, Vernon.
You're very kind. Of course, as Hannah well knows, I am an information technology troglodyte, and this was a fire drill. We made it. I'm going to read two excerpts from my book. They're both about 2.5 minutes long. The book involves two major incidents, both of which one relates to my family and the other related to my professional career. As E.B. White said, it's never just one thing. So I'll just have at it. The South was always set up for the underculture sale of booze, and Winston-Salem was a good drink house town. Drugs got into the mix later as the commerce of it all simply unfolded as supply met demand. The North and Midwest and West and the rest had a bar, saloon, speakeasy culture. The South did not. The Southern well-to-do went to the club or to each other's homes. The rest scrapped around in places where the word got out. There was always music, a radio, a guitar player, or a guy on a stand-up piano. The South was religious, so piety trumped reality, and the consumption of alcohol was an automatic bad thing. The South bought into prohibition early, and with the passage of the 18th Amendment, the pursuit of a jug of juice became cloudier and not only morally reprehensible, but illegal to boot. And so the underground bred underbelly culture was born. These juke joint operators bought their rot gut whiskey and beer in bulk from illegal, out-of-the-back-door suppliers, who in turn had gotten the hooch from warehouse and truckload pilferers. Money changed hands, folks looked the other way. There were no permits, no licenses, no sales tax. There were no hours of operation. They just operated as and when they wished. Blue laws? What blue laws? Most of the time, the police welcomed the drink houses. In the less than well-to-do parts of town, there was one every few blocks. They were local. People were in one place. They were not roaming the streets. It was all self-contained and mostly always peaceable. Drink houses countenanced a good time, even rowdiness and dancing, but fighting was abhorred, quickly quelled, and heavier violence was absolutely verboten. Yet if a place got marked as dangerous, it was instantly known as a bucket of blood, and people stayed away with the real in-game predictable result. And as marijuana came into play, the attendees were usually even more soothed and calm. A drink might be $2 or $3, usually a darker whiskey cut by half with water. If there was a call for a straight shot, the price went up. Places usually kept the offerings pretty lean. Can of dry bourbon, a blended whiskey, cheap vodka, one kind of beer, lower shelf Blatz or some such. Moonshine was often available. Some folks like to call shine chicken because it made you real limber. Some other folks called it Joe Louis because it had the knockout punch. And there's a crime. And most of this is true, by the way. A little fiction, but most of it true, and you have to kind of connect the dots. There has been a shooting, and something murderous has happened. And this is when the detectives come to the drink house, and the dialogue goes there. "Hello there, this your place?" asks Wilkins. "Yeah." "Aren't you Miner, Kurt Miner?" "That's right." "We got a call. Someone in the neighborhood called in gunshots from here. What's the story?" "Fellow got shot." "You see it happen?" "No, I was in the back making food." "Uh-huh." They walked toward him and up the steps. "Mind if we come in?" "No, help yourself." The two step in while Miner holds the screen door for them. The front room is dark, save for the one lamp on below the framed pictures of Dr. King, President Kennedy, and Jesus. The back room and kitchen are still lit with the many strings of red, green, and blue Christmas lights and one bare bulb back in the kitchen. That glares too. How about we turn some lights on in here? This is all I got. Party going on? Sure, Friday night, good time to have one. Hot summer night. People like to have a good time. They see Rise. They see a shotgun leaning in the corner next to her. "Who are you? That your gun?" "No, I'm Rise. I help cook." They survey her enormity. She is mountainous. She evinces no threat. She is calm and polite. "You see anything?" "No, I was cooking and making sandwiches and the like." That thing loaded? Not that I know of. What do you know of? Not much. The food and instruments of Friday night street dining are arrayed in front of her. She is instantly credible. Wilkins and Miller side glance each other. They know they have decided to let that weapon just sit there. They turn back to Minor. Where's the guy that got shot? Not here. Not exactly sure. Up the hill somewhere. You might ask her. Minor nods towards Felicia, sitting slumped, head down. What's your name, young lady? Felicia. Felicia Lineberger. Bo was my man. Who's Bo? My man who Kenny killed. Who is Bo? Bo Diddley. Benjamin Winfrey. She raises her head, a brief defiance of her ruined place and station flaring. Oh, Bo Diddley shot and killed? One detective looked at the other. They both nod. One winks. That's right. And who did it? Kenny? Who is Kenny? That son of a bitch, Kenny Peake. Okay, now where is Mr. Diddley? Some men's took him up to the church on the hill. Okay, now where is this Kenny Peake? He ran out after he shot Bo. I saw it all. He's out there somewhere. She waves her arm vaguely toward the front door. Okay, you stay right there. Sir, Mr. Detective, Kenny Peake is just down the street standing under a tree. Really? So you say. How do you know that? I saw him there. I told him to stay there. I don't know what happened. He is not armed. He's my brother. Oh, really? Okay. You both stay right here.
Oh, Vernon, that's great.
It was fun.
I'm glad you chose a scene with Rise in it. I think she was my favorite character. And you describe her, how did you describe her? Like a biscuit rising in a pan. It was brilliant.
She's real ill now. She was my client years and years and years ago. And that is how I got to know her, and I adore her.
Wow, and I adored her too in your book.
And it was through her that I met and ended up representing Kenny Peake.
That is so cool. Well, anyway, when I read Friday Calls, the sense of place, Winston-Salem in the 1950s and the drink houses and the country clubs, the sense of place was as strong as the magnolias that are blooming right now around town. I was totally transported. You have a really unique way of describing people and place. And now when I hear a train whistle, I think of how you describe the Southern Railroad as a great steel slinky accordion. But of course, this train causes mayhem in your book. So I wondered if you would talk a little bit about how you come up with such original descriptors, your writing process, and maybe even a few tips for our audience to how to write through this pandemic. So I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Well, y'all prompt me. I come up with this stuff. I think in great part, I had this enormous reservoir of stories that come from my practice in the courtroom and the people I have dealt with. And so that gives me inspiration. I was taught very early on, be observant, pay attention to where you are. And that translates certainly in being a trial lawyer. Every case I've ever had, I go to the scene. Wherever it happens, you just stand there and look at it. There's no telling what you're going to get. Something sensory is going to come to you. And I never thought about writing a book until about 3 years ago. But I had these two true stories that were rattling around in my head. And I had a good friend that said, would you stop talking about writing a book and just write one? And I concurred. And haltingly and sporadically, I started it. And it turned out pretty good. I don't want to give everything away, but I'm happy to tell the nice people who have joined us. The two central stories are both true. The killing of Bo Diddley, Ben Winfrey, in the drink house. There is the transcript of the preliminary hearing, the real transcript that is in Friday Calls. The other big event, which you, Sarah, have alluded to about the train, there was a man named Archer Glenn who was my uncle. I did not know him. I was 2-3 years old when this happened, but Uncle Archer got hit by that train.
Oh my gosh.
And I used to ask my mother, tell me about what happened to Uncle Art. She said, we don't want to talk about that. We just let that go. And finally, a couple of years ago, she did talk. And all of a sudden, there you go. My writing style is eclectic. I'm beneficiary of great education, had to write a lot. As a lawyer, you have to write a lot. You have to write oftentimes motions and briefs that are quote unquote convincing. I've never had writer's block so far, and I hope that doesn't come. I would say writing during the pandemic, these very difficult times, pretty much the same rule all the time. You can sit there and have all the best ideas in the world and things that you really like, but if you don't sit down and write, it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. I remember somebody called time on me because I'll ramble. There's that great line when Oscar Wilde said, I had the most awful day. I spent half the day putting a comma in and the other half of the day thinking it out. And what I do is I just let it flow, and it seems to go. I should have brought a prop in here. I have a great big, it looks like webbing, where my children learn to do that in school, to write a paper, write a composition. I have big pieces of poster board and sort of brainstorm on it and create it, and it all comes out just fine so far. I mean, I don't think I'm going to end up on anybody's bestseller list, but I'm having fun doing it, and Hannah has helped me enormously. There's just no question. And also, my editor Alice Osborne gets a lot of credit in Raleigh. They are sort of like the governors on my undisciplined engine, and the one I'm working on right now, and we're real close to on the final edits. Alice chopped. Well, I'll put it this way. It took me a year and a half to write Friday Calls. It was about 110,000 words before Alice helped me maneuver it down to about 95,000 words. The successor book, called You Have Your Way, I wrote it in 9 months, 186,000 words. We have chopped about 30,000 words out of it. Mm-hmm. I really like it, and I think it's going to be pretty good.
Great.
Anyway, I love doing this. 45 years in the courtroom is plenty. I have 2 cases left. And then this is my next avocation, which I enjoy so much. And y'all are real kind to have me. Appreciate it very much.
Well, that's great. I can't wait to read the next one. Okay, JG. Sense of place is very strong in Last Girl Gone as well, especially for those of us who know and love Hillsborough. There's the Orange County Speedway. Isn't that where the opening scene takes place?
Sure is.
There's the Orange County Speedway. There's Orange High School. There's King Street and Churton, the wooded banks of our beloved Eno River. There's even the Orange County Library in your book. Yay, library.
That's right. I know where my bread is buttered, Sarah. And
I tell you, I love that code scene at the library. I really like deciphering, so I thought that was really cool. So I will never look at a soybean field quite the same way, though, after reading your book. Can you talk about what lured you to Hillsborough as a setting, and about your writing process, and also any tips for writing during these hard times?
Sure, I'll take a swing at it. Well, first I got to say to Vernon, you first thought about writing a book 3 years ago, man. That's pretty good. I think you've got the gift. I had a chance to take a look at the beginning of Friday Calls, and being able to put together a pretty piece of syntax is like having a singing voice or something. You've got it as far as I'm concerned. So I thought it was great. Also, I couldn't help but notice only 2 cases left. It's going to be your last day on the job soon?
It's 45 years is enough, and thank you so much for your nice words. And I always wanted to go out on top of my game. I've seen too many people stay too long at the dance, and people will whisper, oh, he's lost it or she's lost it, and I don't want to do that.
Well, I got to wonder what's going to happen, Vernon, though. Like, it's the day before your retirement, I think something's going to go down. You'd have to try one last big case.
Well, I may have to try both of these, which would be fine, and they're both pretty juicy. One is a medical malpractice. The other is an 18-wheeler wreck and explosion.
Oh, man.
We'll see.
They sound
My
like books
gosh.
to me.
Yeah, my gosh.
My mother says, I don't understand what work you do. And I say, yes, ma'am. She's 95 and in Winston-Salem.
Sure.
And this is anecdotal, and then I'm stepping all over you. But
No, I want to hear it.
when I got the book, we got it out and published it independently. And so I take a copy to her because it's Mother's Day. And you could tell she just thumbed through it. She hadn't read it. She called me and said, I have a question for you. And I said, yes, ma'am, what is it? She said, why aren't I in here more? And I said, because you don't bring much to this party. But she's in the next one pretty good.
Yeah.
She got her wish. Vernon, a born raconteur.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But yeah,
we'll see.
I'll take a swing at these questions. This book is set in Hillsborough. Maybe the first thing that's worth mentioning is that when I originally wrote this book, it was not Hillsborough as the setting. I originally set it in a fictional town, and then I just stole different parts of Hillsborough. I pretty much pillaged all the best parts. And by the end, I used it as a template. It wasn't really a template by the end anymore. Hillsborough deserved its due, I thought, in the book. I also live locally. I live in Durham. I had, visited all these places, had some of the ideas for this book in these places. And I do think maybe that there's some cachet to a person who's writing about a real place, a place where they live, or, in my case, I live nearby, though, that just gives it a little bit of a sense of realness. Unlike Vernon, I'm mostly working from my imagination. Don't have any big 18-wheeler wreck cases to draw information from. A little bit about me. I grew up, as you said, in a small town in rural Wisconsin. And I think that certainly infected my imagination when I was writing this book. Not just this book, I think it infected the place where stories come from, wherever that is. Maybe Nora can let us know when she goes to talk a little bit. And maybe infect is the wrong word too, because it doesn't really resolve itself. But, I think it's something to do with where you grow up in childhood. So I guess it's like a chronic condition, like the chronic condition of childhood that everyone carries with them for the rest of their life. And this medical metaphor has kind of gotten out of control, and it's starting to sound like I had a terrible childhood, which is not really true. I think I had a pretty average childhood, which you may not believe after you read this book, but it was my childhood. And so I think that it got under my skin, and my first impression of the world and what it was like was an impression of a small town. And my first impression of people were small town people. The way their lives intertwine, the way that families can ally themselves for generations and hold grudges just as long. And it's not just the people, I think it's also the place is special as well, that small towns are surrounded by wide open spaces and a vast emptiness. And when I think of mysteries and crime novels and thrillers, I think each setting is scary in its own way. In a city full of people, the one person hunting you could be in a crowd nearby that could be close enough to touch you, and you would never even know. And that's its own specific brand of terror. And conversely, a rural setting, at least to me, when I think about one, a rural setting is a lonely setting. And no one can sneak up on you in the middle of a soybean field. But on the other hand, when they come for you, there's nowhere you can run. And it's the difference between claustrophobia and agoraphobia. In the first place, the walls are closing in. In the second, the tension comes from, at least in my mind, it comes from that negative space, that empty space all around you. All that nothing around you starts to press in on you somehow, and all that air, and suddenly you can't breathe. And there's something ominous about a rural landscape. In a city, my fears are based around other humans. But when I'm in the woods, my fears include the inhuman additionally. So it adds a little extra special layer for me. So what am I trying to say about setting? Let me think. I guess what I'm trying to say is when I pick a setting, I pick it because the same reason I pick a character or the same reason I pick a premise. I pick it because I have a feeling. It gives me a feeling. And there are feelings and there are feelings. I don't mean that I'm bored with traffic or irritated at work. I mean that I think about a person or a place, and I'm a bell that is struck by a hammer. and the frequency of that particular daydream just happens to be my resonant frequency. And when that happens, I kind of think it's the job of a writer to stand up and take notice. And I do think that situations ring true to us personally because of our childhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And in Last Girl Gone, you mentioned things that people might recognize from Hillsborough, but the thing I was worried about were the differences.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was worried about people who lived there and what they would think, because I did take a little bit of creative license as I depicted Hillsborough. Hillsborough isn't that remote as I think it appears in the book. Hillsborough isn't that lonely. And especially I've lived in the Triangle for 10 years, and I think that during that period, it's become even less sort of remote and distant. And the other thing that I think happens is that the main character, Laura Chambers, is an investigative journalist who's had her career at the Boston Globe kind of implode because of her own poor decisions and bad impulses. And so she's forced to, home is the place you have, when you go there, they have to take you in. So she goes back to the hometown that she hates, and that's Hillsborough. And Hillsborough is a perfectly lovely town. I'm sure many people here have been there. But I hope they understand I did what I did. I took lovely little Hillsborough and I twisted it. I perverted it to make it the sort of sinister, suspenseful setting that I think infuses a good mystery. And I think we also see it because we see it through Laura's eyes. And it's her hometown, and she did not have a very good childhood. And, the poor childhoods make the most interesting adults, I think. And so when the body of those two young girls is found in a field, she doesn't see it just as the tragedy that it is, but she sees it as something more. She sees it as her ticket out. What do you think? Should I talk a little bit about writing process, or have I already gone on too long?
No, you're good. We'd love to hear some about your writing process.
Well, I mentioned having a feeling and that attracting you to a particular story. So I would say if anyone out there is interested in writing a book, that step one would be to pay attention to those moments. Because you can write about anything, but it has to be, in my experience, it has to be the right idea if it's going to sustain you over the course of 300 pages. Vernon said he just did one in 9 months. I think that's a great time. I mean, fantastic for, I think you said 190,000 words. But yeah, especially if you're out there writing your first book, I think you should expect to be living with it for a year or more, which is a long time. Not all ideas are ones that can sustain you through that length of time. You're in an airplane at 30,000 feet, looking down to the earth far below, and something shiny and metallic glints, and it catches your eye. It catches your interest. Pay attention to that. Write it down, that moment. Because it can be very fleeting as well. I think counterintuitively, the ideas that ultimately grow into books don't always knock you over the head and you don't yell, eureka. They can be very fleeting. Personally, if I do not write those ideas down, a lot of them are just sort of gone. So I would say write those ideas down. You have to look inward, which can be really gut-wrenching. If I can steal something from, I had the chance to read the beginning of both The Worst Thing and Friday Calls, both great beginnings, by the way. Nora, anyone who enjoys knives that much, I can't take my eyes off of, wouldn't turn my back to. Vernon had a great quote at the beginning. He puts a quote at the beginning, and Vernon, I'm going to steal it. I'm just going to put it into my little piece here. And his little piece is this little quote was: a writer of history once asked a fiction editor, "Fiction writers never have to get up from their desks, do they?" And the editor says, "No, except for the one thing, they have to get up to vomit." So look outward, but also look inward. It's not always a pleasant process. It certainly isn't for me. I read that and I was like, so if that's step one, I would say step two is to take that feeling that you had, whether it's the feeling of creeping unease in a soybean field in the descending twilight or whatever your feeling was. And then you have to try to bottle it so you can give it to somebody else to drink it. How do you do that? That is a big question. That is the subject of a lot of great books. that is the subject of an MFA in creative writing, I think, pretty much. So it's a lot to unpack, but I guess what I wanted to convey is how important I think it is to define the job, to set the goal of what we want to achieve, which is that I want to pluck a feeling out of my head and then put it into your head. And books are really genuinely magic.
They are.
Language is magic, and books are time machines. You can read The Allegory of the Cave, and you can see those shadows on the wall just as clearly, almost, as Plato did when he was writing it. And I can say the word apple, and everyone who just heard that had a picture of an apple in their head at that very moment, whether you want it to or not. So, tell me that's not some kind of spell. And if it was just nouns, it would be easy.
Yeah.
Bridge, desk, or now I'm just saying things that I can see right now. But if you wouldn't have to practice to kind of capture that feeling and then give it to somebody else. But the emotions, motivations, the foundations of people and their actions are a lot more ephemeral. And it's tricky, but that's what I think about when I sit down. That would be my advice to someone. I would say you had something gave you a feeling, and that should be the thing that you think about at each level, at the paragraph level, at the scene level, at the book level, and then make your other story decisions to serve that and not the other way around. I think is some of the best advice that I ever got. And so for me, it pretty much starts with a strong image, and genre fiction, all genre fiction and mystery in particular, I think is plot driven. I think it was James M. Cain who said something like, writing a novel is like working on foreign policy. There are problems to solve. It's not all inspirational, to give you kind of the flip side to the coin of what I was talking about. But yeah, I do a lot of planning to make sure it's all going to fit together at the end. But that's pretty much, I think, a pretty good where I would start. If I was going to sit down and write a book, I would be thinking about that.
Wow. Thank you, JG. Speaking of apples, I had an apple scene in the third book that I'm writing today. Literally, my main character picks up an apple that's 2/3 gone, and she's hiking in a place where you take all trash out with you. And she wants to analyze the bite marks, but she just sticks it in her pack. And it'll certainly come to play later in the book.
Ooh, I like that.
Isn't that funny that you mentioned apples?
I love that idea too. The idea that I'd be out on a remote trail and the apple, it's not, not only do I find the apple, it's not very decomposed. It's like someone just dropped it.
Exactly. So you're not alone in the woods. Okay, giving me goosebumps. Thank you, JG.
My pleasure.
Let's go on to Nora for a little while. So Nora, your main character, Kella Mace, the protagonist in The Worst Thing, is fearless and sometimes restless, often reminding me, because I read the books back to back, of Laura Chambers in JG's book. I think they would be good friends. The title, The Worst Thing, makes me think of Ape, your character in your, is it your first chapter or a prologue?
Yes, it's a first chapter.
Yes, in chapter 1. And there's something he does that I just have to say. He cuts off a girl's ponytail and then he sleeps with it draped over his pillow. And that's why I have short hair to this day. Could you tell us about the origins of the title? I think it's a great title, and a little bit about your writing process as well, and any tips for our audience for writing during the pandemic.
Yes, thank you. This title, I think titles are titles sometimes just seem to come with the territory, and others you really have to work for. This one, I had the title before I knew the story. Wow. I had in mind some characters. I had in mind 2 female friends who came to life as Kella and Angie in the book. And I had in mind something really bad happening to one of them and the other being called upon to cope with it or deal with it. And the question that I posed to myself is, how would you behave? How would you live your life if you firmly believe that the worst thing that ever could happen to you had already happened to you? And that's where Kella's fearlessness and recklessness comes from. When she's 15, her parents are both killed at the same time in a freak accident. Mm-hmm. And someone says within her hearing at the wake, well, at least the worst thing that can ever happen to her has happened. Yeah. As if there should be some comfort in that. So she hears that as a 15-year-old and takes it to heart that she has some some magical powers that she can get out there and do things. You know, she's probably a bit like me. She wouldn't care to ride roller coasters. She wouldn't care to go deep sea diving or jump out of airplanes. But if a friend of hers is in trouble, then all holds barred. She's out there. She's going for it. So that was really where the title came from. What if the worst thing that can happen has happened? And how would that change your behavior? And then there are several other characters in the book who the phrase will come back. There are 2 or 3 other times in the book when the phrase "the worst thing" comes in as a bit of a refrain with what other people are going through in the book and what they find to be the worst thing. There's a detective in the book who says that his career is going from one person's worst thing to the next person's worst thing. So that was, it became a bit of a theme in the book, but that was a title that occurred to me very early while I was still sorting out characters and still sorting out what the real story would be. I resonated to what both JG and Vernon said about place and writing about place. I always, so far in my 2 novels, I have opted for fictional towns for the very practical reason that then I can put the rivers where I want them to be. And I can make something close to the park because I want it to be close to the park and not because and maybe it isn't in the real place. And I don't want somebody saying to me, well, that's not right. That's not there. That's way over there. Because if you lose the reader that way, I think that's the contract between the writer and the reader, that I'm going to create a world you can believe in and you can trust. And if I break that trust, then we're done. I don't expect a reader to stay with me after losing that sense of trust. So I create places, my settings a little bit more in my earlier novel, Until Proven, the town is a small southern town that would be a mashup of Chapel Hill and Durham, 2 towns I know very well. I've lived in both of them for a long time. And then there's a little bit of Chatham County thrown in because Bynum Bridge, if any of you have ever been to Bynum and you know that bridge across the Haw River at Bynum, that comes into play as well. So that's a mashup, and the town is called Piedmont. So that was a mashup. And the worst thing, it takes place in the city, which never gets a name other than the city, for the reason that I don't want somebody telling me I have it all wrong. I want to be able to make that city. It is a big city. In fact, it could only be New York, but I don't want somebody poo-pooing because I've got something off of Central, too close to Central Park, where it ought to be either way uptown or way downtown or whatever. So I opt for the fictional settings, but then I try to make them real, and I hope they come across that way. I hope they do feel at home in those places. One other word about setting that I was writing up a little blurb about myself when I was doing publicity for my first novel, for Until Proven. And I said something about I love the Piedmont landscape. I love to look out my window and see my native Piedmont landscape. And an interviewer said, well, why? What does that do for you as a writer? And I hadn't really thought about it other than I do love looking out my window at the Piedmont landscape. And I thought, oh, well, our rivers are, the water is dark. You can't see the bottom. There are hidden rocks. Again, if you think about the Haw River, those of you who might know it, the water level goes way up and way down and way up and way down. And when it drops, there are all kinds of obstacles that you might just float over at a time when the river's up. So there's a lot of mystery in that landscape, and you can never quite see over the hill or around the curve. So there's a lot of that's hidden. Even though we have it's not mountainous and dramatic in that way, but there's a lot that's hidden out there in our Piedmont landscape. So I think I do get some inspiration from that.
Yeah.
As far as how I write, my methods for writing, I will say if any of you out there are writers or thinking of it, for years and years and years, I was advised that a great thing to do the first thing every morning when you get up, before you do anything else, before you lose that sort of fog from sleep, do a 15-minute free writing exercise. And I'd heard that for years, and for years I never did. And then finally, about 18 months ago, after doing a workshop on free writing, I began to do a 15-minute free writing exercise every morning, first thing in the morning, and convinced my husband that he really should not talk to me when I'm sitting propped up in bed with my notebook on my knee and a pen in hand. That's a really clear indication not to talk to me. But sometimes it takes a while to get those things across. So we crossed that barrier, and it really has become an ingrained habit now. And I would say I've been doing it for more than a year when the pandemic hit, when coronavirus entered our lives.
Will you put that shower curtain up tomorrow, though?
Yeah.
But at the time that we began to deal with this strange new world with social distancing and coronavirus and all the uncertainty, and there were some nights when I lost a little sleep, but I maintained that habit first thing in the morning, and it even became more important to me to get up and do that writing exercise first thing in the morning. For one thing, it meant if I didn't manage to get the energy to write anything else that day, I had done my 15 minutes. I had done something. So writers out there, I know I won't be the first person to recommend this to you, but let me say it has proved its value to me recently, and I would encourage you to think about doing a 15-minute free writing exercise every morning, or most mornings. Take a day off once in a while. I learned to write from a wonderful mentor, Max Steele. Those of you who've been around Chapel Hill a while have at least heard of Max, maybe took a class with him. He taught me to write scenes.
Wow.
And I think, also one thing I always want to mention, he also told me to always tell what people eat. Always put the food, always put food in your fiction, because what people eat says so much about them. And certainly, Vernon, your book does that. That scene that you read does that. So always put the food in there. But he taught me to write scenes. So the way I approach writing a novel is not so much to write a novel, but to write scenes. And sometimes it's a 3-step process. I think about it a lot. I think through a scene. And then I may get out my notebook and physically write it out with the scribbles and the scratches and the arrows and the big X marks, blow that up. And then I go to my computer, and then I will do the word processing from the notebook, although I very often don't look at the notebook. Just I've worked it out first in my head, then on paper, and then I go to the word processor. I can sometimes skip that middle step, that I think it out clearly enough that I can go straight to the keyboard with it. But that's how I approach it, and I try to do scenes. I may decide later that scene is too long, or that scene could be a little longer. But I try to think in terms of a scene and get the drama. Every scene needs its drama. Every scene needs its own, while it's going to connect to what came before and what comes after, that it needs to have some structure and some power of its own. And that works well for me. And it also means if I don't quite have the next scene, it doesn't matter. I know there's going to have to be a scene somewhere in the book when X speaks to Y and they have a big fight. So I can go ahead and write that. And then it'll be ready for me when I get there, even if it's not the next scene in order. So that also is a little thing that can just help keep me going on a day when I might otherwise feel like I'm spinning my wheels. Not quite sure what comes next. We'll just jump ahead, do it, find a place for it later.
Yeah. That's great. I write the same way, Nora, scene to scene. And I think some of the hardest writing is getting from one scene to the other. That's hardest for me. I hate it.
It can be very hard. And one thing to realize is you may not need it. You may not need the transition, you can
Yeah.
just jump.
Yeah. Yes. And I think all three of you have done that well. I think you just start with the scene and it works so well. So I can learn that from all three of you. Well, I would like to hear what everybody's working on next. So let's go back to JG. JG, what are you working on now? And what do you have coming out?
Well, first I'll say I write those useless transitions every time. Got to go back and cut out the part where they got out of the car and like walked to the house. I'm like, what are you doing? You never learn.
It's Elmore Leonard's, one of his rules is leave out the parts nobody reads.
That's right. Yeah, it's a good rule if you can swing it. I'm trying. But I am working on a forthcoming sequel to this book. It's called What Lies Beneath. A little pushback because of the publishers in New York, and there are some things going on up there. Yeah, writing during the pandemic is hard. I have young kids. I see people musing online about the wonderful books that we're going to get at the end of the pandemic, because we've all only had time to write, and that has not been my experience personally. I don't know about everybody else too, even if I didn't. You know, if books are bread and your imagination is the sourdough starter that everyone has now, then you got to feed that thing with something. I can't imagine just sitting in a house and having the fodder to sort of for my imagination to come up with something. So I wonder, but I am trying to write something new, something different. It's a story about a young guy who by circumstance is forced into the witness protection program. And as he's being transported through the high mountains, the Bitterroot Range, which is kind of the western geological runoff of the Rocky Mountains in the panhandle of Idaho, he's got two mob thugs who try to kill him. And they didn't plan for it to happen there either. It's the middle of a blizzard. It's not a good time. So if I was pitching this book, I'd maybe call it Fargo Meets the Fugitive, or Jack London on steroids, or The Donner Party if everybody had working chainsaws, something like that.
Wow, that is so exciting. Can't wait for that. How about you, Vernon? Tell us about your second book and what you're working on.
I call it The Successor to Friday Calls. As I said earlier, the title is You Have Your Way. I began to develop sort of a protagonist character, lawyer named Eddie Terrell, and of course working off of my experience. And it would be fair to say that there's a lot of me and Eddie Terrell, but it's been fun. But I've shifted. Eddie has a difficult relationship with his girlfriend that has gone south. He just got to get away. He goes to Montana, down to southwest Montana, where I've been a few times. It's a whole different world than Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Winston-Salem, Hillsborough, the whole thing. And he's going to meet a girl, and he's going to bring her back. And it's just been a lot of fun to write. And of course, I'm incorporating some cases in it with a little bit of imagination, a whole lot of imagination, and developing Eddie's persona, which is not pristine. It's not crystal pure. Eddie is a sweet guy, but he also has a maverick streak, and he has a streak for adventure. And we'll just have to see how that turns out. I know how it turns out. As I said, we're on our last edits this weekend, and then it's going to go back to be looked at one more time. And then we've been lucky to enlist the services of some beta readers. I didn't know what a beta reader was until 3 weeks ago. But Hannah's got me some beta readers. I've got me some beta readers, and we'll just see what happens. I'm already working now. I'm going back out to Montana in about 3 weeks, and my friend likes to hike and all that, and so she goes off with her friends and does that, and I stay in the cabin and write and read. And so it's fun. One little rule, there's so much. This is such an interesting world that we all know about and are learning about. It's so interesting to listen to everybody talk about how they approach it and all that. in order to make me get started, I got an egg timer and put it on 1 hour and put it behind my laptop so I could not see it. And it's a pretty innocuous tick-tock, tick-tock. When it would get there, that was really helpful. I don't have to do that now, but I do have a rule. If I sit down to write, and I try to write 5 days out of 7, I gotta turn out 1,000 words. Because that's a benchmark that I've got some content or substance in there. Now, lots of times it's not worth a darn, but every now and then that nugget is there. You can run with it, and so that's been a real helpful thing. And the one thing that I am not going to do is, God is my witness, unless I am struck down, I am not going to write a damn word about this pandemic. I am sick of it.
Yeah.
You know,
nobody wants it, Vernon. Who wants to read about it? I'm with you.
I know.
Imagine how many thousands of short stories, blurbs, and between that and all the recent unhappiness of the last number of days, we're being bombarded. And I kind of just want to go have a drink and something good to eat and then get back to it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's what title. The reason I call Friday Calls was it's an ambiguous thing. Uncle Archer was killed in 1952-53. Kenny Peake was shot and killed. Bo Diddley was shot and killed about 26 years later. But I merged them together, so it all happens on a Friday night. There's a bookmaker, as Sarah, you know, there's a bookmaker in there named Harry Davis. He was a real guy. He was my late father's bookmaker, and he was my bookmaker. And people call Harry on Friday.
I love the bookmaking part in your book.
Yeah. Well, that's my old gamble. I was a handicapper for a long time. But and then You Have Your Way is that Eddie is now trying to sort of bend the world to his way. And with some success, lots of success, but a lot of difficulties too.
Good.
so anyway, that's where that came from. And was it Nora say just the title just sometimes come to you before you even get to the book? Yeah. And I don't know what my next title is, but I'm going to work on it when I'm out in Montana.
Excellent. I set a timer as well, Vernon, and I make myself write for an hour, and it's kind of like you as well, Nora, your 15 minutes in the morning. I can write for an hour every day. I might not write more than that, but I can do it every day, and at least you've got something done. So I love the timer concept. It works for me. How about you, Nora? What are you working on now?
Well, the gentlemen are going west, and I'm coming home. I'm moving from the city back to Piedmont with my next book, which has no title as of yet. The file in my computer says a new novel. I'm bringing one of my characters from the city back to Piedmont.
Great! I'm dying to know which one.
Well, I think I won't say yet.
Okay.
And the premise behind the story is another idea that has intrigued me for quite a while, going back to a different murder case that happened in North Carolina some years back now. And that in that case, there was a guy, there's no question about his involvement in the crime, but I always thought he didn't set out for it to happen. He wound up bad company, wrong place, wrong time. That did not absolve him. But I felt that this was a guy who felt real guilt because of his involvement in this thing. And so I wanted to explore that issue of somebody getting swept up in a moment, wrong place, wrong time, thinking he was going to do something, get paid for it, he needed money, he'd get paid for it, and nobody would get hurt. And then somebody did get hurt.
Wow.
Then tie that in. As I say, I'm bringing one of my characters with me. So just because I like the character and I think she's got more story in her.
Oh, good.
so she's going to be involved in the resolution of this mess that the guy gets himself in. But I'll be sitting home while you guys are out west. So Have fun. Have fun.
Well, I think that sounds great. Wrong place, wrong time. Sounds like a good title to me.
Could be a title. We'll work on, maybe I'll try that out as a working title.
Well, I would love to open up questions from the audience now. So who has some questions for our panelists? Anybody? See if there's any questions here. They're all, I've got some, oh great. Judith has a question. Judith?
Let's see. Oh, there we go. I tried to write a mystery novel once, and I outlined the whole thing in great detail, so I knew exactly what happened, and I lost all interest in writing it. I wonder how many of you discover the ending as you're going, and how many of you, plot it out in advance and then write it that way?
I'll take that first, but I'm interested in the other answers. I do not know what's going to happen. I write it, the first draft is to find out what happens, so that I won't lose interest in it, I think. And then the work is in the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth drafts, which I have had to learn to love. What I enjoy is is finding out what the story is. I really love the first draft work, and the rest I appreciate. But yeah, I don't tell me how it ends, because then I've got to go write something else.
Huh.
I pretty much know how it's going to end. In tears, usually. I mean, for the right sort of thing that I usually end up writing. But it is a painful process to write 30,000 words and throw it away. It hurts. I've done it. I've touched the hot stove enough times to know that maybe I should not do that and be a little more careful with my time. Although I'm very sympathetic to your viewpoint that you sort of, I feel the same way about telling people about it. Like it's my own little secret as long as I'm writing it. And any premise boiled down coming out of my mouth sounds stupid to me. But if I could hand you a manuscript, I think I could pull it off. So I generally know what's going to happen, or at least have some big benchmarks. I will outline in depth the next, 3 or 4 beats, and then I usually know, what's going to happen in the middle and what's going to happen at the end. And I do try to leave a little mystery to myself, though, about how exactly I have to navigate from A to B, B to C.
How about you, Vernon?
Friday calls, because I had these 2 central, if you will, incidents. I had a pretty good idea how it was going to end. But it was the great creativity. I mean, I could have written a book that said my uncle got killed in a train wreck and then a guy got shot and I represented him. Well, but there's a whole lot more to it than that, and a lot more subtlety than that. And then the one I've written now, kind of, it just happened. And I did not know how it was going to end until I'd work on a chunk of it. The next day, like you said, write forward. Then you'd go back. Let me look at this. I need to fix it. And but the endings in this one, some compartments I know, other compartments where it's like whack-a-mole. You hit it this way, something else pops up. So
That's great.
And the other thing is, I'm comfortable now.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a one-note Johnny. And I'm very appreciative that this one was well received and is still being well received.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to just say, okay, now I don't play golf, I don't play tennis, I don't hunt, I don't fish. I walk the big bridge in Charleston. I walk all over the place, and I think. And my neck hurts, so I've always got my head down thinking. And that's a process of age as well. My cervical spine is not all that great these days, and I want to write more. And I'm going to work on some short stories. And interestingly, some of the like you were talking about, it's hard to write 30,000 words and then have it discarded. Yeah. Well, we've cut about 35,000 words out of this initial manuscript but they're big chunks of stuff that I can use as building blocks in the third one. And so a lot of times, it's like a boomerang. You think it's thrown out, but it's not. It's just there waiting to be used or sort of refitted, reconstituted.
That's good.
and I love whoever said, forgive me, the writing exercise was that. That
was Nora, I think.
Nora. See, I love that because you're building a reservoir. Now, I don't do that, but I have boxes of stuff in my office upstairs, stories, case transcripts, and you start looking at it and it comes back to you. So I've sort of been writing little stories in cases and my professional work, and plus, I don't know, I pay attention. So you always want to keep building your pool, and I think that's a great idea.
I think so too. Any other questions? Yes, Rick. Hi, Rick.
Hi.
That's Rick from Brothers. He's one of our misters.
Yeah, I'm a
mystery and crime.
I'm a mystery too. 2 points on the knowing your novel. I normally have a pretty good idea. I have a very strong mental timeline on my novels, and I have a pretty good idea how the story is going to end. But that being said, one of the things that you could probably do is what I do is it's not so much how the novel ends, it's how the character grows and develops throughout the story. And that's where I go to concentrate. Even though I know how it's going to end, I'm saying, well, how did this character get from point A to point B to point C and get to that end? So there's a possibility there. Go back and see what's motivating your character or what things are going to happen to your character to get them to the end. The other thing is that I'll make a comment. I am writing a coronavirus book. Yeah, I know that. I know that's swimming upstream in this group right now. But here's my thought.
To, Rick.
Well, there were a lot of people resistant to write post 9/11 books because of pain of what that was, and the coronavirus has a lot of pain. We now have somebody in the family with it, and they're not doing well. But the whole point of it is that while it's painful and it's there, somewhere, somebody's going to write about it. So I'm writing Love in the Time of Coronavirus. I'm at novella length now, but I might get to novel length at the end there. And I'm sure about 64.7% of the people on this call know where I got the title from. So I'm going to shut up now and let somebody else get on.
Well, good, Rick. 10 years from now, I'll want to read it. Any other questions?
That would be perfectly fine with me because the sales of my books right now are pretty thin.
All right.
I saw a question on the screen a moment ago.
Yeah, there's about 3 or 4 in the chat.
In the chat, let's see here. Gosh, I don't have my glasses on.
Can I take a swing? I'll take a swing at one, Sarah.
Yeah, that'd be great, JG.
One is from MRCST, Mr. CST. How do you write dialogue for a character with a drawl or an accent, etc.? Dialect, I don't do it. I try to avoid it if at all possible. That's my solution. Just to give you one perspective, obviously there are people out there who love to do it, who rely upon it in characterization. I think it is extremely difficult to do well. I think that when it's done poorly, as I think I do, it's bad. It's some of the worst stuff. And so I just wanted to weigh in and say, one perspective, my solution, I just don't do it. You could describe their voice and then write as though you were, recording a little bit of a transcript of what was said, and use some, characterization and adjectives to kind of capture it without you actually using dialect. So just my thoughts on it.
That's great. I'm kind of the same way, though I'm lucky I get to throw in some New Zealand terms, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But Vernon, you're great at dialect.
Thank you. I guess I like doing it. I've got a pretty good ear. Again, that's from all these years in the courtroom. In the courthouse, you're listening to your clients. obviously there's a big divide here between white and black in Winston-Salem at the time this book took place. And I'll give you an example. And this, white people talk like this sometimes, especially if they're well-to-do. And black people say, where's the body? Well, some men's took it up to Hill. Now, I can't put that accent to it, but men's, plural, is code for that dialogue. And so you have, now I've got a lot of Western stuff in this next one. And so that helps propel me along. And I enjoy doing it, but I also, sometimes you're at a loss. So you got to sit down, what would this person say? How would they say it? Who is your character? How do they speak? What do they see? And that's that whole thing about see it, visualize it. I loved playing football when I was younger, and I was not terribly fast, and I wasn't very strong, but I had good instincts. And I had a coach say, just learn to see the field, see the whole field, let it come to you. It'll be fine. That's what I try to do here. Let it come to me. Forcing it in there, it's not going to work out for you.
Yeah.
And somebody said there's a Christmas tree behind me. That is true. And the reason it's behind me, along with a really creepy Santa Claus, is that I like Christmas, and I gave up getting a real tree some years ago. It was a wonderful fake, and I like it. So I decided when I undecorated from Christmas, I said, I'm leaving it, and we'll just see. So I hope there's no story other than my envelopes.
Okay. Here's a good question from Pamela Campbell. Does it whiplash a reader too much to start a novel from a POV that is not the protagonist and then move the rest of the novel in the POV of the protagonist?
I'll go. Since I started chapter 1, page 1 that I read to you, that he's the villain, he's not the protagonist. I think you should probably have one point of view at a time, one point of view character at a time, but you can shift. You can have chapters or sections from one point of view, and then other sections and chapters from other points of view. I do a lot of editing. That's the other hat I wear, and I can tell you that a truly omniscient viewpoint character is extremely hard to write well. The next time you're reading a book and you recognize that it's in an omniscient viewpoint, then break it down and analyze it, and you will find that a very high level of skill is required for that. It just isn't easy. And I would much rather, and I'm not sure I have that level of skill, but I'm very good, I think, at writing from a single viewpoint character at a time, and then have several different viewpoint characters. And I think that maybe I'm being lazy. I don't know. Maybe I'm being scared of omniscient viewpoint, but I think that works really well. And it doesn't keep either the writer or the reader trapped in one character's head all the time. That can get really claustrophobic. First person is tricky too, because if you're writing as a first person narrator, then you've got to have that person present in every single scene, or they don't know what happened, so they can't relay it to the reader. So I think that multiple viewpoint characters work just fine. Just do it well. Whatever it is you decide to do, do it well. If you want to try omniscient, then I would say find a couple of books you can really look at and really study the level of craft that's involved in that.
Totally. We have. Go ahead, Pamela.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Where are we? Oh,
Pamela. There we go.
Let me clarify my question a little bit. Hey, Nora.
Hey, Pam.
The only time in my novels in third person, in my protagonist point of view, except for the opening scene, and I struggle with how to ask that question. And my question is, that's the only scene that's not in her point of view. Does that whiplash to start the book that way and then to enter into the book, does that whiplash the reader too much?
Not necessarily. Just, write it. Go for it.
Okay.
Pamela, I can think of a book that's exactly like that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's Patty. It's Patty at the beginning, and the rest of JG's book is Laura Chambers.
I wrote a prologue, and well, if you choose to go down this noble road, people have in writers groups have told me, you write too many prologues, man. This is like a prologue on the prologue, and I do. I love a good prologue. Is my answer. I think it's such a powerful tool to. Like you said, I think you have an opportunity to set up a character's motivations, especially I think at least in my book, I think not fully clear until later on. And I also think it's such a powerful opportunity to establish tone and place.
Yeah, totally.
And for me, it helps me separate out, writing a first chapter is like writing the pilot of a TV show or something. I think you've seen one or read one where it can be a little awkward because there's a lot of material to establish, and you want to establish it very quickly and make it feel like lived in, and you're not just dumping all this data on people. And so I think it's a really powerful tool to kind of get around that. So I'm all for it. I give you thumbs up.
I'm all for it too. My second book, Pamela, starts a prologue of a character, and the rest is another character, and it's crazy. It's from the point of view of a shark. No one can top that.
I love that.
Do you have your book so I can write it down?
Yeah, my first book is Molten Mud Murder. Again, takes place in New Zealand.
Okay.
The second one comes out in September, and that's The Bones Remember, and that's the point of view of a great white shark. Woo! I think we have to wrap it up. I think we have time for one more question. Do we have?
Thank you.
I could go back to this again. There was a question on chat about editors. Do you edit yourself, or did your publishing house edit? How did you each work editing? You have 30 seconds each. Vernon, go first.
Alice Osborne is my editor. I found her in that she used to write press releases, publicity stuff for our law firm. She's really involved with the North Carolina Poetry Association, and we just get along. And she's very, very helpful. I found her by chance. And,
that's great.
I've gone fun with her for an hour and a half this morning.
JG, how about you?
I work with an editor at my publisher. She was also my acquiring editor, which is not always the case. That's not always the person you ultimately work with, but in my case it was. And it's been a wonderful experience. Shout out to Jenny if she sees this. So she's watching. She does a great job. She's very patient, but it's been a great experience.
That's great. And Nora, I think I know perhaps what your answer is, because you're the best editor.
Well, I do a lot of editing for other people, and I look for somebody who will edit me the way I edit other people. Yeah. And I find that, first of all, in my writers group, I have a wonderful writers group that's been together for a long time, and they will take it apart for me. Then I have to put it back together, but they do that job. And then I also hire good freelance editors for myself as well.
Very good. It has been such a pleasure tonight to be with J.G. Hetherton, Last Girl Gone, Vernon Glenn, his book Friday Calls, and Nora Gaskin, The Worst Thing. I think they should all go on your coronavirus reading stack. They're a great escape for the hard times we're going through. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, audience. We are so glad to have you here. Thank you to the Orange County Public Library and to Hannah Turner for putting this together. It's been a lot of fun. So I think we're going to say good night, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.